everyone, and welcome to Time and Money Mastery. We are your co-hosts. I'm Indiana.
And I'm Sam. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on any of our episodes. Now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Time and Money Mastery. I am your co-host Sam, and today's episode is going to be all about my Sunday planning routine. I'm going to share with you exactly why a Sunday planning routine is necessary if you want to experience all that life has to offer, and I'm going to take you through the step-by-step process that I engage in every single week that has changed my life dramatically since I've implemented it. Now, this episode is perfect as a standalone. However, if you haven't already done so, make sure you go and listen to the episode Why I Quit My To-Do List Addiction. The two episodes are complementary, and after listening to that episode, I just know you'll be even more psyched to implement your own Sunday planning routine. So let's get started. What is a Sunday planning routine? Now, there isn't a hard or fast definition of it. However, my Sunday planning routine is a non-negotiable investment that I commit to weekly that ensures that I have the best week possible. Now, as the name suggests, it's something that I do every Sunday, which is intentional, and it's a routine. So I follow the same-ish steps each time, and I systematically envision my week ahead. Now, before I get into the how of it all, let me tell you a bit about why this routine has made such an incredible difference in my life, and why, if you want to experience all that life has to offer, you will start implementing your own too. Now, Sunday planning allows you to make plans as your best self, not as your tired self or your stressed self or your overwhelmed self or your lazy self. Your Sunday planning routine allows you to pick in advance what your main outcome for each day will be. And you can do that with all of the due dates and deadlines in mind because you're looking at your week with a bird's eye view. Now, Sunday planning allows you to make time for what's important rather than just what's urgent. And it'll also encourage you to make space to, produce your best work without having the stress of feeling like you're running out of time. And it'll also allow you to pivot and make some adjustments if you need more time for one thing over another. Before I had a Sunday planning routine, I would take life as it came and I would start the day with, some kind of idea of what I needed to do or, a gigantic to-do list that would almost always guarantee that I'd start my day feeling frantic and like I was already running out of time. I would get so affected, by the environment around me. If something happened that would throw my schedule out of whack, I'd just get so stressed out, I'd be so snippy to those around me. I get so overwhelmed and sometimes I just decide that I was done for the day and I just lie in bed and watch movies all day. But after having a Sunday planning routine, I have a clear vision of what my ideal looks like and feels like. I know that everything that needs to be done will get done. I feel calmer and happier. I'm actually enjoying my life. And also when things don't go according to plan, I don't need to stress because I know exactly how to handle crisis and to pivot so that each day is still a success. There's a part of the Sunday planning routine where we look ahead to see what could possibly screw this up. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's part of what makes the Sunday planning routine so great is that it allows us to anticipate. Tony Robbins says this thing that losers react, but leaders anticipate. And so this is one of the easiest, most basic ways to start to learn how to anticipate in your life and essentially become a leader in your life, not just in the definition of leading other people, but being able to be the person who leads yourself and leads you towards the outcomes that you desire. So if you're ready for this kind of change in your own schedule and how you feel as you live your life, then make sure you've got a pen and paper handy so you can implement this along with me. I'll also encourage you to come back and listen to the podcast episode a second time or maybe even a third time once you had to listen to it so that you can actually make sure you're implementing these steps rather than just taking in more knowledge. All of this stuff that I'm about to share with you would be great, and I'm so excited that you're here listening to this, but it would be even better if you're actually implementing it in your own life so you can start to see some of the results. Okay, now the first most important point I must make is this. Regardless of what you've believed prior to this moment, hear me when I say that the week begins on Sunday. Now, some people will agree with me easily and others will want to fight me and hear me out while I explain why this is. I was firmly in the week begins on Monday team up until about maybe halfway through last year. And a mentor of mine said that she switched her schedule to viewing Sunday as the beginning of the week because it meant that come Monday, she was rearing and ready to go. Imagine if you don't start planning your week until Monday. By the time you've gotten your head around what deadlines are coming up and what you have to do and how you're feeling, half the day is gone. You've got 10 new emails in your inbox and 50 new tasks that need your attention, not to mention all of the other things that are important. So now your brain and your energy and everything about you is now focused on the urgent, that the important stuff starts to fall between the cracks. When you wait until Monday to start your week, you guarantee that you'll be in reactive mode for the rest of the week. It's as if someone is expecting you to start sprinting before you've even stretched your legs or put on your shoes or even figured out what direction you're sprinting in. When I look at my week ahead as my best self, without the influence of being in a stressful moment or feeling like I've got a time crunch to think about, I'm able to make better decisions that are more aligned with what I want, but also better decisions that are aligned with my long-term goals rather than just the instant gratification of, oh, I'm not going to do anything today because I can't be bothered. Instead, I'll be thinking, oh, there's this one thing that I really want to be working towards. And in order to get there on time and get there and do the best that I can, I need to start today. And I can do that when I'm doing my Sunday planning routine because I'm coming from a place of excitement and passion and vision and, being able to look at things with perspective as opposed to being in reaction or being stressed or overwhelmed or feeling like I'm running out of time. So that is the reason why it is very important for us to start thinking that our week begins on Sunday. I highly, highly encourage you to start thinking of your week in that way. And so now we're going to get into the how of it. Now, if you're interested in a template, I've got one that you can download. I will put the link to it in the show notes, or you can message us on Instagram and I can DM you the link directly. So our Instagram account is at Time Money Mastery. So Time Money Mastery, you can search us up. And if you don't have the template, you don't want to use it, that's totally fine too, as long as you have a pen, some paper, and access to some kind of a calendar, so a day planner, a wall calendar, or maybe a digital calendar on your laptop or your phone. Now, some of you might already be tuning out at this point saying, I don't use any of that stuff. I'm a creative type, or deadlines don't work for me, or I don't like planning my life, or I like to be spontaneous, or whatever reason you want to give for not using some sort of planning method. But I'm going to be real with you right now. You cannot master what you do not measure. So if you want to become the master of your time, or at the very least get better at managing your time, you need to have a way to track where your time goes and what your commitments are and how you're actually meeting those commitments based on how you're choosing to spend your time. So if you haven't ever used one, pick up your phone right now and start using the calendar app on your phone as a start. In a future episode, Indiana and I will talk about the different strategies that we use to master our time and what apps we use and what planners we use and all that kind of stuff. I know that that's something we'll talk about eventually, but if you haven't used any of that stuff before, I would just recommend going with the easy route, using something that's on your phone that you can access straight away. Don't make it too complicated and don't let the complexity of it stop you from taking action. Okay. So we're going to go through this step by step. Step one is to block out some uninterrupted time on a Sunday so you can do this planning routine consistently. Now, you can choose to do this at the same time each week if you want. If you are asking for my recommendation, I do highly recommend choosing the same time each week, because I found that when you commit to the same time, you build it into your routine, but it also means that you're not constantly pushing it back. What I used to do, I used to say, oh, it's fine, I will be really flexible with it, and you still should be flexible with it, but I would say, oh, I'll do my Sunday planning routine at some point on a Sunday, and then it would turn out that I would wake up and I would feel like, oh, I might have a longer breakfast today instead of doing my planning routine. So maybe I'll do it after lunch, and then lunchtime comes and then we decide we want to go to the groceries, and then we do the groceries. And after that, I'm like, okay, I'll do it after I take my shower. I take my shower and I can't be bothered. But next thing I know, it's 9 p.m. on a Sunday night and I've got to choose between planning my week and going to sleep. And because it was a non-negotiable for me, I would tend to choose the planning of my week, but there were times when I would just feel like, oh, this is not worth it. I'm just going to go to sleep. And so I end up not doing it at all. And so I'd highly recommend picking the same time each week and then just being flexible and adjusting if something else that's very important comes up. But if it's something like, oh, do I want to keep watching this episode on Netflix, or do I just want to stay in and sleep in for a little bit longer instead of doing my planning? At least if you make the commitment to do it at the same time each week, you start to train your brain to realize that this is a non-negotiable and you've got to do it. And so take a second now to pull up your calendar, pick a time on a Sunday. I do recommend you do it on a Sunday, but depending on how your lifestyle works, I know we have some listeners who do shift work, so their week, like their working week tends to start instead of on a Monday, start on like a Wednesday or whatever. So I would recommend choosing the day before your working week officially starts. So if you do a traditional Monday 9 to 5, you do this on a Sunday. If you do shift work and you tend to have your weekends on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, then you'd do it on a Wednesday, and then you'd go to work as your first day on Thursday. I hope that's making sense, but you can adjust this based on how it works best for you, as long as you start this planning, like you do the planning the day before your official work week starts. Okay, I've blabbered on for enough seconds that you should have been able to pick a time. And now we're going to move on to step 2, which is to block out your appointments and your non-negotiables. So at this point, you would be looking into a calendar and putting in things like times that you have to work. So people who do 9 to 5, it's a little bit more like unnecessary, I guess, to do this. I still did when I was working my traditional 9 to 5, I would still put my work schedule in my calendar so I could see a visual representation of where my time was going. But this is especially important for people who do part-time or casual work, people who do shift work, people who have multiple jobs even and have different schedules. I'd also encourage you to put in your travel time. So if you know that takes you half an hour to get to work every day, I mean, it might not now given the fact that we're still stuck in COVID, but on the chance that you do need to travel, block out your travel time as well, because that builds up. If you're in uni, if you're still in school, even, I know we have a few listeners who are still in high school. So if you have classes, to put that in as well, to put in things like sports or other appointments like, the doctor, or the dentist, dinner with friends, your laser appointment, things that have already been decided upon that you're committed to doing and committed to attending. So it's important to block out these as your non-negotiables, as your appointments straight away, so that you know what you have left over, because these tend to be the things that you can't really move very much and the things that you don't have very much control over. You can't tell your doctor you want to see them at 11 p.m. or you can't, go to work at 11 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. or whatever it is. So these appointments are kind of things you can't really move around yourself, which is why we put them in first. And then once you've done all your appointments, you move on to your non-negotiables. So your non-negotiables are things like your workouts, your meal times, your self-care time, journaling, spending time with your partner or your family. And when I say like your meal times, I don't mean like block out half an hour and you only have half an hour to eat. Like literally, like if it takes, like block out an hour and a half if you really want to, but be very, very honest with yourself about how much time you're actually spending. I know for me, at my worst, like quote unquote worst, I would eat for 10 minutes and then watch 6 episodes on Disney Plus, and I'd finished eating like halfway through the first episode. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm still having dinner, so I'll keep watching. And then all my time goes away. And in my mind, it's like, oh, but I was eating dinner, but I wasn't really. And so that's why I put in non-negotiables like meal times, not only so that we're aware of how much time we're actually spending, quote unquote, eating, but also to make sure we actually prioritize it, because so many times, especially when we're entrepreneurs, looking after ourselves and nourishing our body tends to fall lower on the priority list. And so that's definitely something I'd put as a non-negotiable. Just another note on self-care as well. I don't have an opinion about what else you consider a non-negotiable for you in your own life. However, I do feel very strongly about including self-care as a non-negotiable, no matter who you are or what you do. It might not feel that important, especially when you've got a billion and one things fighting for your attention. But the truth of the matter is that you can't function at your optimal levels if your tank is running low. Especially people who care for others, mothers especially, are unbelievably guilty of putting their self-care on the back burner to look after everyone else. And some people put self-care off, thinking that it makes them selfless when they do that. But if you think of it this way, putting off your own self-care in order to care for other people is completely counterintuitive, because if you're not taken care of, if you're not happy, if you don't have the energy to show up, then you're robbing the world and your loved ones of the best of you, because you can't offer the best of you if it's not there to give. Self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity. If you don't get anything else out of this episode, it would be totally fine, as long as you left with the commitment to care for yourself as a non-negotiable top priority. Now, I just chucked a whole bunch of stuff at you guys in terms of blocking out your appointments and blocking out non-negotiables. So in the interest of time, I'm going to keep going, but feel free to pause this episode here to get everything out of your brain and onto a page or onto your calendar before moving on, and just unpause when you're ready for step 3. And also, just another note, if you are struggling to keep up as I'm talking and you don't want to keep rewinding it the episode 50 billion times, all of the prompts that I'm saying are included in the template that is linked in the show notes. So make sure that if for no other reason, if you just want to see the things that I'm saying that you should block out or should consider blocking time out for, you can download that, because it's kind of like a little list there. Okay, so step 3 is to do a brain dump. So essentially, you're going to be answering the question, if you came to the end of the week and it was everything you wanted it to be, what would have happened? Now, you're not creating a to-do list. This is very, very important. I don't want you to add 100 things to a list and then expect to have every single one of them done by the end of the week. And if you don't, then you're a failure. That's not what we're doing at all. You're allowing yourself space to unload everything that's weighing on your mind or on your heart, everything that you want to or need to get done before the week ends. And it's not like if these things don't get done, then the week was a failure. It was more, okay, what are some of the things that if I had all the time in the world this week, I would want to get done? So things as simple as going to the gym, or stretching in the morning, or going to the grocery, or paying a bill, or I don't know, filling out a form that you've been meaning to fill out that you need to send. I don't know what's on your to-do list. For some people would be like, I don't know, completing an assessment or reading a book, or I don't know, finding a dress to wear for your friend's party next week. Whatever it is, it could be something really, really intense or really, really serious, like for work or for school or for uni, or it could be something really, really chill, like finding clothes, or, going for a walk, or buying shampoo because you're out. If it's something that is weighing on your mind or your heart at all, if it's taking any of your mental processing power, then you are encouraged to put this on this brain dump. That is the whole point, to get it all out of your brain and onto a page. And just a reminder, if you need some time, pause it here, but I'm going to keep powering through. The next thing, or the next step, is to prioritize. Now, step 4 is all about priority management. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. What people believe is time management is really just priority management. And the reason why this is so important to understand, and such an important distinction to make, is that it's because we will never run out of things to do. You will always, if you ask your brain, what do I have to do today? Your brain is like a supercomputer. It'll come up with 1,000 things you could do. The difference between people who are perpetually stressed and feel like they don't get anything done in comparison to people who enjoy their life and seem to be unbelievably productive is that the latter have clear priorities and they take action according to those priorities. So, what does all of this mean for you? Basically, what you have to do is grab your brain dump. You can either rewrite it based on order of priority. So like literally have it on one side of the page, and then on the other side, just rewrite it based on what's most important first, next important second, and so on. Or you can label them into different categories. So I choose 3 categories when I do this labeling. The 3 that I choose are a low priority, which basically means it would be nice if this is done by the end of the week, but I won't have a cry if it doesn't. The medium priority is I must get this done this week. At some point this week, this needs to be done. And high priority, this is the top priority, and I must do this in the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, if you do choose to use the labeling technique, the key here is that you cannot choose any more than 2 things that are high priority, and you can only have 6 things that are medium, which basically means 1 medium priority for each of the remaining days of the week, not including the day that you're actually doing this planning. The reason why we do this is because you could easily say, oh, but it's all important. But if it's all important, then none of it's really important. You know what I mean? The reason why we cap it at 6 is because it forces us to examine what is truly the most important thing that must get done. Everything feels important until you have to start comparing it to each other. I'm not saying you're only going to get 6 things done in the week and then you lounge around for the rest of the week. And, if you still have time and capacity to do more, then of course do more. But what we do by choosing 6 and capping it at 6 is that we are training our brain to understand, okay, this is the most important thing. And if this is all that I get done today, or if this is all that I get done this week, then this is still a successful week. So I'll give you an example. It used to feel unbelievably important to me to go for a run in the morning. I'm not a runner. I don't enjoy running. I like to walk on the treadmill and listen to a podcast or read a book or play my games or whatever. But I don't like running outdoors because I have to pay attention to what's going on around me. But for whatever reason, I'd gotten in my mind that in order to be a successful entrepreneur, I needed to take a run at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it felt like the most important thing to do, because if I wanted to be a truly successful entrepreneur, I needed to be up and running, literally running at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it also felt unbelievably important to journal every single day for at least 10 minutes about what I wanted to do that day and what was important to me. And it also felt unbelievably important to meditate for 20 minutes and make sure that I'm connecting to both my masculine and my feminine energy. And all of these things felt unbelievably, excruciatingly important. But it was too difficult at the very beginning, at least, to prioritize all 3 of these things at the cost of one another. So if I was waking up to have a run at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd be so sleepy by the time it was time to meditate that I wouldn't really be concentrating in the meditation. I'd really just be like snoozing, sitting up. And so what the whole point of going through this priority exercise is looking at 2 things that feel very important to you on your list and say, what is more important? Getting up and running at 4 a.m. or meditating? If I had to choose one, if I absolutely had to choose one, which one would be the one that makes the most difference in my life? You choose the winner, and then you kind of do like a process of elimination. And then you say, okay, cool. If meditation is more important to me, what's more important, meditation or journaling? And you choose one or the other. You might actually run into to a point where it feels equally important, and that's totally okay. But you need to be super honest with yourself. Are you saying it's important because you're too lazy to actually do the hard thinking and figuring out, okay, what is truly important? Or is it because they actually do both hold equal sway in creating a great quality of life for you? So I hope that makes sense. If any of this doesn't make sense to you and you want more examples, literally send us a DM on Instagram at Time Money Mastery, and I'll be more than happy to do an IG live or to answer your questions directly, because this kind of stuff, it does feel very forced at first. I will admit that it did take a bit of time for me to implement it and actually feel like I was doing it in a way that was helping me. But by the time I actually learned, I gave it space and gave it time to work, and as it started working, I was able to go about my day feeling incredibly happy and passionate, knowing that I was doing everything that I needed to be doing. And that sense of urgency kind of started to fall away, which was great. And so my top tips with prioritizing is to be completely honest with yourself as well. Priorities shift all the time because we as human beings shift. As a young person in high school, I would always feel so unbelievably guilty if I would say that school was my top priority over, because then it was like I was choosing school over family, or like I was choosing school over my partner, like my boyfriend, or like I was choosing school over, I don't know, anything else. But having a priority, having one thing as being more important than another doesn't make you a bad person, because our priorities will shift. One week school might be the most important thing, the next week family will be the most important thing, or maybe something pops up and then your health has to take precedence over every single thing that's going on in your life. The key here is to release any judgment and be honest with yourself about what's truly important to you. Because if you lie to yourself and out of fear of appearing like a bad person or being selfish, then your decisions aren't actually aligned with what's most important to you. And you're not going to see these results. You're still going to feel stressed. You're still going to feel overwhelmed. You're still going to feel like you're running out of time because you're not actually acting in alignment with who you truly are and what's important to you. Okay, so that's step 4. So we have, let me just run through them all with you again. Step 1 was to block out uninterrupted time on a weekly basis, preferably a Sunday, to make sure that this is something you consistently do. Step 2 is to block out your appointments and your non-negotiables. Step 3 is to do a brain dump. Step 4 is to prioritize. And step 5, the final step, is to answer the question, what could potentially screw this up? So at this point in the process, you would have been able to choose 6 daily outcomes. There's a reason why we choose 6 medium priority 6 items at a medium priority level. Sorry, I lost my words for a second. Because you have 6 days, which essentially means 6 daily outcomes that you can assign one of those 6 medium priorities to one of the days in the week ahead. And the purpose of doing this is to actually allow you to have some sort of vision. It's like, okay, this is a medium priority, but out of the 6 things as a medium priority, item number 2 and item number 6 are the most important. So they go at the beginning of the week. You know what I mean? You can shift these around because within the 6 that feel equally important, there will still be 1 or 2 that rise above the others. And so this will give you perspective and allow you to make choices that are aligned with what's most important for you and what must absolutely get done. And basically, step 5 is getting you to evaluate and say, okay, what could potentially screw this up for me? If say, for example, I do my Sunday planning on a Sunday and I decide that writing a blog post is the most important thing for me to do on Monday. And I ask myself the question, what could potentially screw this up? And I know that on Mondays, I have client calls and I have some students because I also tutor casually. And I also know that on Monday nights, I tend to have dinner with my boyfriend, and sometimes we have dinner with our friends on a Monday night. I don't know why we're doing that on a weeknight, but adulting, it's the only time we're all free. And so knowing all of this stuff, I can ask myself, what could potentially screw up my ability to write this blog post? Okay, well, if I have a late night on a Sunday, will I wake up early enough to get everything done? And if I end up waking up late, will that push my whole schedule back? What if one of my tutoring sessions runs long? Will that screw that up? Or what if I need to do some prep work for one of my tutoring sessions because one of my students is really struggling with something? Or maybe one of my clients decides that they need more time, or they're going through something that they'd like me to help them work through. There are so many things that could potentially screw up or shift my schedule on a Monday that could stop me from making that a priority. So the question is, what could potentially screw this up? And then how can I correct for that? So if I know that shifting my schedule around might mean that I don't have time for it, maybe that means that instead of doing my blog post in the afternoon, I do it first thing in the morning as soon as I wake up. That it's the absolute first thing that I do before I do anything else, so that anything else for my business, so I know that that gets done. Or maybe I make sure that my clients are aware that I can only go overtime for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I can't go overtime for half an hour, for example. Or maybe I will look at my priorities and say, okay, well, if I want to make sure that this gets done on Monday and I don't want to have to, create content for my students to use on a Monday lesson, maybe I can do it today on Sunday so that I can pass that over to them on Monday without having to think about it. So I have more time and more energy to actually get this done. Maybe if I need to work into the night, that I can make sure that I don't have a dinner planned with my friends or with my partner, or I can ask them if we can push it an hour back to make sure I get everything done. There are so many little things that could influence our ability to actually get our priorities taken care of. But asking the question, what could potentially screw this up, allows you to come from a place of, okay, if something goes wrong, how will I correct it? And it'll allow you to correct it in advance. So you're not reacting, you're already prepared. I always tell my clients that we want to plan to succeed, but prepare for failure. We always plan, we always go into a situation with the mindset of this is going to be incredible, this is going to work, there's no negativity at all. But we'd be completely naive if we don't prepare for the possibility of failure, because there are things that are going to come at us and there are things that will make it difficult. And if we go in there blindly just with toxic positivity saying, oh, it'll be totally fine, when life hits us in the face, we're going to get smacked to the ground. And so it's very important to plan for success, but prepare for failure. And asking this question, what could potentially screw this up and how can I correct for that, will allow you to do just that. Okay, quick summary. Point number 1, pick a day that you're going to be doing this consistently every week. Point number 2 is to block out your appointments and your non-negotiables. Point number 3 is to do a brain dump. Point number 4 is to prioritize. And point number 5 is to anticipate by asking the question, what could potentially screw this up and how can I correct for that in advance? Now, just a few top tips for you before I wrap up this episode. I highly recommend that you use a paper planner or a digital calendar when you're doing this so you can see it visually. I mentioned it earlier, just having these things in your head will almost guarantee that it'll fall out of your head at one point of the week and you're not going to be able to remember everything you did. So I highly, highly, highly recommend getting it out of your brain and like into the physical world on a digital document, in your calendar, on a piece of paper. And another top tip is to be kind to yourself. Things happen and it's up to you to have the awareness about what's important, that it's so important that it can't be moved, and what can be shifted and what you can be flexible with. Like there are so many times when I used to get so upset at my family when I was in high school living at home. I'd be like, oh my gosh, you guys are disturbing me. I can't study. This is my designated study time. And the thing is that I could have been flexible about some of those things. There were times when I had assessments due and I absolutely could not. But the times that I didn't have assessments, I probably could have been a bit flexible and pushed it back 10 minutes so I could, have a bonding experience with my sister or to have a conversation with my dad. But, I didn't allow myself the grace to be flexible when it was necessary. And developing that awareness of what is so important it can't be moved versus what are the things I can be flexible with will allow you to still sort of dance in that space of, I'm being strict and disciplined with myself, but I'm also human. And I also acknowledge that there are 1,000,000,001 other things going on around me and that I can't control everything. Point number 3, or top tip number 3, is that it's a process. You'll eventually see what works best for you. And maybe you'll adjust this Sunday planning routine to more suit what works for you or what feels good for you. This is just the things that I've developed over time and things that have worked for me. But this is all the entire Sunday planning routine that I've taken you guys through is all it's been a process of picking and choosing the things that have been taught to me by my mentors, either mentors that I know that I've spoken to or mentors that I interact with through their books or their content or their courses. And I've picked and chosen what has been valuable for me and created my own. And so I encourage you to do the same. If you're going through this process, give it, a couple of weeks to see if it works. But if you're finding that you're really, hitting up against a barrier and it's not working for you, make adjustments based on what you think will work for you. Top tip number 4 is to not overcomplicate it and don't overpack your week. One major outcome per day is the goal, which is why we choose 6 medium priorities, because that means once we've gone through our 6 medium priorities, all your other priorities or all the other things on your brain dump that were listed as low could be added onto a day if you have time for it, if you have space for it, if you have capacity for it, but there's no pressure to actually do that. And my 5th and final top tip is to listen to the Why I Quit My To-Do List Addiction episode. I do not remember. I probably should have checked what episode it was. It's episode 4 maybe, or 5. It's one of them. It's one of the earlier episodes. And that will actually teach you the value of quitting to-do lists. And I feel like it's unbelievably necessary because it will mean that as you're doing the Sunday planning routine, you're making sure you're doing a brain dump and not a to-do list. And understanding the difference between the two will mean the difference between feeling stressed and overwhelmed and feeling like you've totally got this, that you can be calm and that you have all of the resources and all the time you need to make your life the best it can possibly be. Okay, that was a lot of content I just chucked at you guys. I hope it was valuable for you. Now, if you want us to cover a specific topic on the podcast, make sure you follow the link in the show notes to record your question in a voicemail or to submit a question via our form.
So that's a wrap. If you loved today's episode, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and let us know why you loved it.
If you know someone who needs to hear this, then send it their way and share it to your stories, tagging us at Time Money Mastery.
Feel like you're wanting just a little more? Jump on over to our Facebook community. You can find the link in the show notes.
That's all from us today, fam. We'll see you soon.